Good afternoon, and the warmest of welcomes to all of you to this gathering in remembrance and celebration of our beautiful friend and brother, Sohaib Sultan. My name is Allison Bowden. I serve here at Princeton as Dean of Religious Life and of this chapel. It is a bittersweet thing to gather today. Bitter, of course, because we have lost Sohaib and he is gone from our physical presence, but sweet as well because the love that he engendered within and among us all lives on so powerfully, and it will for the long term. Immediately following this gathering, there will be a reception on the plaza on this beautiful day right in front of the chapel. We will be enjoying cherry cokes and cheeseburgers together. These were two of Sohaib's favorite things, enjoying them while watching Kung Fu Panda. We don't have Kung Fu Panda today, but we've got the cherry cokes and the cheeseburgers, and we hope very much that you will stay. Thank you again so much for being here.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful. Praise be to Allah, Lord of the worlds, the most gracious, the most merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment. It is you we worship, and upon you we call for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those you have blessed, not of those against whom there is anger, nor of those who are misguided. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى صدق الله العظيم. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate, exalt the name of your Lord, the Most High, who created and proportioned, and who dusted and then guided, and who brings out the pasture and then makes it black stubble. We will make you recite, and you will not forget, except what Allah should will. Indeed, He knows what is declared and what is hidden. And we will ease you towards ease, so remind if the reminder should benefit. He who fears Allah will be reminded, but the wretched one will avoid it. He will enter and burn in the greatest fire, neither dying therein nor living. He has certainly succeeded who purifies himself and mentions the name of his Lord in praise. But you prefer the worldly life, while the hereafter is better and more enduring. Indeed, this is in the former scriptures, the scriptures of Abraham and Moses. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. 7 years ago today, I and many others present in this chapel were sitting around a campfire with our teacher, our guide, our beloved chaplain, Imam Sohaib Sultan rahimullah. We were at the Princeton Blairstown Retreat Center in northern New Jersey for the annual MLP Spirituality Retreat, singing songs, praying under the stars, reuniting with old friends and making new ones, remembering God and finding reprieve from the toils of academics, discussing matters of the heart, of the soul, of good character, roasting halal s'mores, nature walks after dawn. The good life, as Imam Sohaib envisioned it. These retreats got us to envision it too, and man, once we did, it put all other visions we had for our lives to shame. At around the midpoint of the retreat, Imam Sohaib led us in the Doher Prayer, and upon its conclusion, turned around to us, his congregation. He stood up, the splendidly golden autumn wooded lake as his backdrop, and addressed us. He said, "This weekend, you know, it's a little strange. Ajib, he called it, using the Arabic and Urdu word for strange. Not just this weekend, but much of living Islam where we do. As a tiny minority of the population, it can feel strange. Finding a space to pray in the middle of our work days and having to sometimes resort to stairwells, campus greens, and empty classrooms? Ajib. Your prayer app of choice's adhan notification going off in the middle of a seminar? Ajib. Grounding your academic work and general ideation in a theistic framework? Ajib. Or, as another illustration that Imam Sohaib described that day, being invited to a quintessentially fancy reception on campus and walking around dozens of suit-clad university officials and their distinguished guests with their spirits in hand, and meeting them in a long South Asian tunic with a glass of plain seltzer in hand. Ajib. Listing these scenarios, Imam Sohaib turned to the oft-quoted hadith in which the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "Islam began as something strange, and it will return to being strange, just as it began. So give glad tidings to the strangers." Imam Sohaib taught us that the essence of Islam is a sense of strangerhood, but that from that shared feeling of alienation could arise loving, God-conscious, exquisite communities, like the one that we shared that weekend in the woods, and like the one we have gathered here today. My beloved Imam, my dear Sohaib, it's a little strange also living without you, walking into Jummah after Jummah and not seeing you at the pulpit, not having you to turn to for counsel, walking among the spaces, including this very chapel where you conducted several mawlids, and trying to channel your spirit, your wisdom, your love. Ajib. May Allah reunite his caretakers of the earth, his strangers passing through this dunya, in the realm where, as Imam Sohaib put it, we will sip tea and laugh together in the everlasting gardens. Rahimullah, Ameen. Assalamu alaikum.
Hello, everyone. When I first met the Imam Sohaib, I didn't know what to expect. I never met an Imam before and was nervous to remember to call him an Imam and get it right. But then I met this wonderful person, a gracious human full of wisdom, joy, faith, and humanity, all wrapped up into this person with a gracious smile. Sohaib was one of my favorite people. He just had this way about him that you couldn't help but admire and gravitate towards. It's funny because we're about the same age, and all I can think of was what have I been doing all my life, and how I needed to be around this person all the time. Because every time I was around Sohaib, I felt peace, like everything was okay. Sohaib and I collaborated a lot on programming, and he was always ready to challenge the community to think critically and explore new ideas outside their comfort zones. Him, along with his family, frequently occupied the field center and made it home for the Muslim community, and it was wonderful. Right before the pandemic sent us home that March, Sohaib and I was about to lead a group of students on a week-long trip to Senegal. I was very excited, not just because I love to travel, but because I was going to spend the week with Sohaib. Somehow I just knew going on this trip, I would come back all enlightened and envisioned and just be a better person. That somehow I would be able not only to learn from Sohaib more about spirituality, Islam, and the likes, but I would learn by watching him how to be a better human. And although we weren't able to go, I was still able to learn from Sohaib, but in an unexpected way. When we got the news about his illness, like everyone else, I was devastated. I was devastated because I couldn't imagine in Princeton without that peace and calm he brought. I couldn't understand another person being diagnosed with cancer. I was devastated for Sohaib's family and the community I watched him bring together all these years. But ultimately, I was devastated for Sohaib and all that he would be leaving: his wife, his young daughter, his parents, the people closest to him who knew him better than any of us, the people who shared him with the world. But I kept thinking about how life is so unfair, unkind, and often cruel. Why does God call him all the good people? Sohaib was one of the best people I knew, and I don't say that about everyone. I was angry. But then I read Sohaib's messages, his messages of his journey with cancer and coming to terms with immortality, of how to die, about hope, patience, grace, and preparing his family, and I couldn't believe it. After his diagnosis, how is he still able to be so amazing and comforting to others? Anyone else would have been angry, sad, and I'm sure he had his moments. After all, he was human. But then I said to myself, of course, if anyone, it would be Sohaib. Sohaib made me remember that life is also joyous and hopeful, full of love and compassion, and I saw all that in his messages and in his family, and it helped me. It helped me deal with my own experience of death and the loss of the people close to me, especially from cancer. I realized that it is in death we learn how to live. We learn how to love more, find joy, strength, clarity of what's important versus what we thought was important before, and the ability to feel the pain but still manage to get up every day and go on. Not in the same way, but in a different way, a new kind of way, because it is in the memories that we hold, the little things that we do in remembrance, the stories we tell, and the love we felt that provides us comfort. So even in death, Sohaib continues to teach me so much, like how we must embrace each day of life as a gift of gratitude, especially for those we wish were still with us. Thank you.
Friends, we gather to celebrate the life of Imam Sohaib. It's fitting to do so, and I'm glad to be here, and can I just say, very glad to be in person in this chapel after such a bitter and difficult Zoomy season. No doubt many of you knew him much better than I did, but his spiritual gift of friendship exceeded the time we spent together over the past decade. He was one of those people whose gentle and gracious presence give Princeton a distinctive character. Quick with a smile, a knowing look, pleasant conversation. I always enjoyed chatting with him at various receptions, meals, and indeed after he audited my undergraduate course just before the pandemic and the progress of his illness. You could sense the depths when with Sohaib. A week ago, it turns out, another great light of love at Princeton passed, my friend and colleague, Albert Rabateau. Al was the foremost scholar of African American religion, and an Eastern Orthodox Christian. I don't know if Al and Sohaib knew each other or ever met, but it was my privilege to know them both. Both exuded compassion, warmth, humility, faith, and concern for social justice. Al told me the classroom was a sacred space. Sohaib's groundbreaking work through the Muslim chaplaincy seems to me to have had similar ambitions in terms of thinking about education at this place as the formation of the whole person. Both were pioneers of change at this august institution. Reading the tributes that poured out for Sohaib at least make me think of them together, devoted to Princeton, to its people, to their own faith traditions, and to changing this place. In my dining room at home, there hangs a beautiful calligraphy of Rumi that Sohaib gave me now 10 years ago after participating in a conversation about Islam and Christianity with Tariq Ramadan, one of many events that he organized to display the beauty and the diversity of his faith in honest conversation about difference and agreement. It reminds me of him. May his memory be eternal.
I met you on that summer, you became my brother so fast. I lived my life, thought that the summer wouldn't end. Now you can see what you've done to me so fast. Let's take a ride to the end of time, my friend. I met you on that summer, and you became my brother so fast. I lived my life and thought that the summer wouldn't end. And now you can see what you've done to me in the end. Let's take a ride to the end of time, my friend.
One of my last visits with Imam Sohaib took place in the small garden in the front of his house. He was wrapped in a blanket to keep warm, eating the chocolate bar that I had brought for Radia, walking slowly with a cane, but so full of life, wisdom, and light. He had finally stopped working on campus, and I asked him what finally made him decide it was time. He told me he had other things to attend to and not enough time and energy to do it all. He was juggling too many balls and had to let one of them drop. When I asked him what he was focused on, I expected him to say spending time with family and friends and working on his legacy. But then he said, I also need time to work on my soul. I need to prepare my soul to meet Allah. I really had never heard anyone say that, and it touched me deeply. Imam Sohaib was one of the last people whose soul needed working on, and yet the first and only one I've known to be so intentional about preparing his soul to meet his Creator. My friendship with Sohaib unfolded so easily and naturally because we had so much in common. But I do not want to take this for granted, for in our world, it is not commonplace for a rabbi and imam to be friends. And Sohaib was my first and my dearest Muslim friend. We bonded over moments at dinners with the other chaplains when we both checked the ingredients in the food to make sure they were in accordance with halal and kosher, and while processing in university ceremonies, joking about how much water to drink, given the heat of the day and the lack of access to a bathroom. Our connections deepened as we shared the family matters that were weighing on our hearts, concern for siblings and aging parents, and struggles with infertility. When we were traveling together in Spain, leading a Muslim-Jewish dialogue group, my father was dying of cancer. And we spent many a bus ride sitting together talking about my father and his illness. I hadn't really thought about it until Imam Sohaib opened our final joint program by acknowledging that our friendship has carried us through many losses and difficult times. That was the depth behind the laughter after Sohaib got terribly scared by a small four-legged animal across the street, or our joking about students being so hard to pin down for a program. It was a blessing that our friendship brought our families together to share meals and conversation, and I'm deeply grateful for our friendship. Even though Imam Sohaib came to Princeton with the immense responsibility of building a robust Muslim life program from scratch, he made time in his heart and his work for Muslim-Jewish dialogue. Together, we created deep encounters for Muslim and Jewish students over fall and spring breaks in Spain, Detroit, and Utah. We taught many classes together on a wide range of topics, including war and peace, fasting, prison reform, and leadership moments in the Quran and the Torah. We served on many interfaith panels together, and I always wanted to go deeper, talking more about the commonalities between our traditions and the overlapping references in Arabic and Hebrew, the shared emphasis on practice and law. In these moments, Imam Sohaib was my partner, but also my teacher. And then there were the moments beyond words when we shared prayerful community together, bringing Muslim and Jewish students together to attend Jummah and Shabbat prayers. Though Imam Sohaib's legacy is vast and multifaceted and has touched us each in different ways, I am so grateful that Muslim-Jewish dialogue was one important piece of it. Sometimes I feel like the moments I shared with Sohaib when he was dying, though fewer in number, were even greater in impact than the moments we spent together when he was healthy and carefree. Our last joint program together was a conversation about death and dying in the Muslim and Jewish traditions. And I was so moved by how thoughtfully he and Arshi wrestled with what to tell Radia so she could accept her father's death and still love Allah. His acceptance and embrace in his final moments were unlike anything I have ever seen. And I know from talking with Sohaib how much Arshi's care and courage and faith made that possible for him. When he died, knowing how joyful he was to be reunited with Allah, I could not be sad in my heart. But the sadness is here with me today, the longing to be together in this world for more time. But I am comforted by Imam Sohaib's final words to me. On that last visit in his garden, I asked him to give me a blessing. He spoke with such love and kindness and hope, blessing me with more than I can ever fulfill. He talked so vividly about the connection we would maintain even after his death, a connection that would transcend this world, a connection between this realm and the heavenly realm. And his faith in that moment, his vision was so strong, it was enough for both of us. I can only hope to be worthy of maintaining that connection with my dear friend, my dialogue partner, my teacher, my spiritual inspiration, Zichrono Livracha. May Imam Sohaib's memory be a blessing.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Greetings of peace, love, and blessings to all of you, my brothers and sisters in Islam and humanity, as Imam Sohaib would say every Friday. On a chilly weekend of the 2021 spring semester, a few weeks before his last blessed breath, I called up Imam Sohaib. I had been contemplating a change in career paths from being an engineering computer science student aiming to, be a software engineer, earn some money, to becoming a clinically trained psychologist and therapist, inshallah, working with people to help them find relief and peace in their lives. Now, making a dramatic turn like this is not usually what a junior spring looks like for most engineering students. So naturally, I was in a situation of confusion, somewhat distressed, looking for some relief and meaning in that change. God protect me, I was even considering becoming pre-med for a short span of time. Na'udhu billah. And Imam Sohaib, in very Imam Sohaib fashion, despite everything that he was going through, despite all the trials that he was facing, he still asked for me to call him up. Even in those moments, he continued to care for his students, as though the chaplaincy in his role as a caretaker was not just a job, but really a part of his heart. So I called him up. We spoke about those changes. We talked about several different aspects of the change and what that would look like. Family plans, practical effects, academic progression, all those things that you think about. The thing I wanted to talk to you all about today, and the gift that he imparted with me that day, that I want to share with all of you, was that of perspective. I cannot remember his exact words, but there are a lot of things that I do remember and that I took meaning from. He told me, Fawaz, you should know that this calling to your career of this sort is one that one day when you look back at your life, when you're at the end of your life, is something that's going to give you peace. He said, as I sit here with such little time, and I look back over my years, despite the mistakes and the regrets and the lessons, I feel at peace knowing that Allah gave me the opportunity, the ni'mah, the blessing to be able to do something with my time that had meaning. With meaning that positively impacted people's lives, that spread some level of good, even if just a little, in this dunya and in this world. And Allah gave me the opportunity to do something that, inshallah, one day when I stand before Him, I will be relieved and happy to have done. But in his role as a chaplain, he also shared with me that he had sat on the bedsides of a lot of outgoing souls, and he had witnessed the worry, the anxiety, the existential concern that so many people have over that same question. Did my life have meaning? I may have lived a happy life or the lifestyle that I wanted or made a name for myself, but did I spend my time, my money, my resources doing something that lifted somebody else up? Did I do something that mattered, something that, as I'm about to stand before God, when I retrospect over my life, will make me feel like I actually invested the blessings that I was given into increasing the goodness of this world? So thinking about our beloved Imam's life, I encourage myself to ask, and I encourage all of you to ask, what on earth am I doing with my years, my resources, my life? And one day when I'm on my deathbed, when life is asking me to let go, and my soul prepares to depart, will I be at peace with what I've done and the life that I've lived and the person that I've spent my time becoming? So I say this to emphasize that when I think about celebrating the life of our beloved and blessed Imam Sohaib, may the mercy and love of God be upon him, I think about living a life where we're thinking about and working towards living our own life as a life that we would one day want to celebrate. Just as we've come together to celebrate the life of our beloved today. Even as I walk through the halls of Murray Dodge and come to the Jum'ah and eat samosas, I still hear his voice. I still think about his sayings, what the monkey, yo, yo, yo. But at the end of the day, regardless of, what each of us as the people that benefited from him were doing, what major we're going into, what our background was, what communities we were from, I think Imam Sohaib showed us that, we can still build a life that we can look back and be proud of. So I pray to Allah to help us cultivate lives and hearts that one day we can look back and be at ease with. And I pray that all the good that we do in our life continues to benefit the spirit of our beloved teacher, because our tradition teaches us that whoever shares beneficial knowledge with one other person, both of their souls will reap the rewards. And I pray that God preserve his wonderful parents, his beloved Arshi, and our beautiful Radia, who's growing up so fast. And I pray that we, as the inheritors of the community that Imam Sohaib loved and cultivated, can continue to nurture ourselves and nurture that community while it is in our care. Ameen. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, greetings of peace. I'll first read a reflection by Sarad Hassan, graduated class of 2020. She wasn't able to be here today. She writes, Subhanallah, glory be to God. I don't even know where to begin with expressing my sincerest gratitude and appreciation for Imam Sohaib's presence in my life. It feels almost like yesterday when I met him for the first time at an ICNA presentation just a few short weeks after I committed to Princeton. I was immediately blown away by his yo, yo, yo greeting and the immediately bright smile he gave to me and my entire family as we told him I was an incoming freshman. It was a brief exchange, but one that I remember incredibly fondly because it was an absolutely fitting introduction to the warmth and love I would continue to feel in every space I would coexist in with him. I can go on and on about the number of times I've walked into his office with a smile on my face and come out with an even wider smile because I felt so incredibly welcomed just by how he carried himself with me and everyone else who would come through the doors. Whenever I would come to his office in tears, he would listen to me and let me sob and proceed to give me advice that I needed to hear in order to overcome the difficulties that I was experiencing at the time. Through observing him and learning from him, I have learned so much about the brevity of life and how to make the best of it. I'm in admiration of his continued dedication to being such a beloved human to many and to being a father figure to so many of us on campus, even though he was the one who was feeling ill. He consistently made an effort to put others before himself, and he made sure everyone in the community, whether new or returning, had a place and felt important in whatever space he would occupy. I'm so grateful for Imam Sohaib's presence in my life. He was such a beloved human, a chaplain, imam, and a role model in this life. There's so much more that I could be able to say, but I'm eternally grateful that during my time at Princeton, I was blessed with the honor of knowing such an incredible human like Imam Sohaib. I'll offer a few reflections of my own from working with Imam Sohaib in the last year of his life. So when Imam Sohaib first reached out and invited me to take on this role as assistant to the Muslim Life program at Princeton, July 12, 2020, he wrote to me, "I know you're newly married, and you have a full-time job, but I thought I'd see if you might be interested. You have the perfect skill sets for what I'm looking for." And I remember reading those words, feeling just overjoyed, just to be called by my mentor to serve a community that was so beloved to me. And then almost immediately came the realization that this would be painful because it had been 3 months since his diagnosis, and so I knew that taking on this role would mean becoming closer to him at a time that he was preparing to depart this world. Like so many of his family, friends, community who were around him, whether physically or virtually, this was a gift and there's nothing else that I would choose. We choose a life of love over a life sheltered from pain because it's the only life worth living. It's a life worth living that Imam Sohaib called us to and that he modeled, full of courage, faith, and grace. So over the course of the next 9 months, yes, it was painful to see him physically endure a lot beneath his warm smile and his cheerful disposition. It was painful to know that we would be separated soon, the uncertainty of whether that phone call was the last time I'd hear his gentle and reassuring voice that had guided me and believed in me over the years. And it was painful, especially when he needed to physically take leave from the university, and he cried on the phone because he couldn't bear not being of service to his community. It was so evident how sincerely he loved you all and how meaningful his work was to him. And yet throughout all of this, there was also so much grace. In addition to being able to witness the grace that he handled his cancer, there was the grace of working at the Office of Religious Life, where I could be around colleagues from all walks of life and faith who deeply loved Imam Sohaib. There was something so comforting and healing about not having to explain what I was grieving or what he meant to me, because we all experienced it. We all have hearts that were touched by him in our own ways. We, as a community, as colleagues, friends, family, walked this journey of grief together. We walked it together because we were all witness to the beauty of Imam Sohaib's spirit, and our love of him has connected us in this sacred bond, a gift that keeps on giving. So here we are, celebrating and honoring Imam Sohaib. This is a grace for him from God and a grace for us. So when I look back at this journey, all I can say is thank you, God, for the grace of Imam Sohaib. May he receive outpourings of it, and may we too be people who live and who die with grace. Ameen. Thank you.
Imam Sohaib, if you were here right now, I'll probably tell you I don't know how to write poems anymore. Remember my first Maulid poem, where I first talked about the rain descending on the slopes of God's mercy, about zikr dancing across the silent room, bodies in elevated submission, heart over mind, speaking to God in brightly colored silences. Yeah, I can't do that anymore. The metaphors have severed their ties with me. I can no longer find my way through these syllabic structures. Honestly, I've written nothing new since I left these halls. Writing this poem gave me anxiety, unfurled balls of emotions I've long held away from this pen and from God. How do I portray the light you emanated, that glow that rested on your face, Honor the love you have given to so many people, the sakina, the peace you exuded, your presence. How can this poem do justice to your legacy? How can this poem honor you, the one beloved by God, when I've quite frankly been far away from God myself? There exists an ocean between us that I am too weak to cross. These words do not feel worthy enough for this moment. My hands are shaking now. The tears are falling. They mark my draft papers before my pen does. And then I hear you. I hear your soft voice full of so much certainty. Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam. Allah, you are the perfect peace, and peace comes from you. You chanted so benevolently, a call and response that is self-fulfilled. Then I see your loving gaze, your eyes glowing, filled with an illuminous light that reaches into the smallest of us, steadies us, and sees us, and all that we are and all that we can be. I feel the warmth that radiates from your smile. Your smile was sadaqah, a charity for those around you. Your smile, so gentle, so strong, picks up anybody in distress, fortifies them, and heals them. Your smile fills the void that we are wrestling with, expansive yet deep with sincerity, tender, like the way a parent holds a child who's taking her first steps. You are sitting in front of me now, one leg crossed over the other, acting in the way that you do. How are you, really? Ready to receive whatever I'm ready to give. In each syllable you utter, you give me room to unload, to lay down the blocks lodged in my chest, weighing me down. I would say something that you are all too familiar with me saying. Imam Sohaib, what I have to say feels too heavy. Feels too heavy for this page and for God. You take it all in, and you shake your head no. You reach out and you hold the heaviness with me until it becomes light again. You remind me, God says, call upon me and I will respond to you. God is near, he is closer to you than your jugular vein. You tell me that he does not burden a soul more than it can bear, and that his mercy is abundant. The tears are flowing by now, quite literally. You have created a safe space for them to land. You hand me your tissue box, right here. And I laugh and I say, Imam Sohaib, I'm always crying at your office. You laugh with me. I hear your laugh that falls in crescendos, nestled with a gentle cackle. You remind me not to take myself too seriously, to laugh often. It heals the heart. And then I remember so many of the times you calmed the storms raging inside of me. As a pre-frosh, anxious about freshman year, the email you sent saying that you and Archie were awaiting our arrival. Relief immediately washed over me. The chaplain lunches at La Mezzaluna when I got to indulge in the aroma of freshly made pasta, and one tried creamy and one tried cranberry juice and Sprite cocktail because you recommended it, taking all my stress away. Dinners at your house and cardboard grains, and that grilled dibi lamb that you made sure to get from Diva's kitchen, reminding me of home so effortlessly. You were always so thoughtful, always knew what was needed. And then I remember being here in this same podium 5 years ago at baccalaureate, chosen by you to recite Surah Doher. By the morning brightness and by the night when it grows still, your Lord has not forsaken you. Did he not find you an orphan and shelter you, find you lost and guide you? I didn't understand it then, but you were sending us a message that in moments of darkness, there will be a brightness to follow, that is promise. that as we step into the unknown to share our wounds with God, expose them to his light, will come healing. In my life's many transitions, you have taught me the power of dua, of holding fast to the rope of God, to search for his light wherever I am. Imam Sohaib, if you were here right now, I would say thank you. Thank you for sharing your light that God gave you, for shining it on all of us, even the parts of ourselves we want to hide. That in dying, your unwavering trust in God pulled you through the painful moments and prepared your community and your family for your separation. Imam Sohaib, if you were here right now, I would ask, how did it feel to be in reunion with God, rejoicing with God and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam? How did it feel to be close to his light now? Nur ala nur, light upon light, such glorious light. Imam Sohaib, how did it feel to finally be home?
When I wanna see my friend today, all I have to say is Allahumma salli ala Sayyidi. When I wanna feel at peace within, all I have to be is in love with my Rasul Allah. Allah. I don't wanna close my eyes for too long, in case I miss your face, in case the world around me falls out of its place. I don't wanna live right here forever. There is a better place. You taught me to be patient and spread the deen instead. Allahumma Allah, Sayyidina Salam. Salam to our beloved, and salam to our teacher. Allahumma Allah, Allahumma Allah. Salam to our beloved, salam to our teacher. Salam to his mother, salam to his father. Salam to his beloved, salam to his daughter. When I wanna understand my pain, all I have to say is Allahumma salli ala Sayyidi. When I wanna feel your heart again, all I have to be is in love with my Rasul Allah. Allah. I wanna learn from you forever, in case I miss a message, in case I can't remember the light between our friendship. I know life did not come easy, but life is in our endings. We're judged by how we end things. We're content with his decree. Allahumma Allah, Sayyidina Salam. Salam to our beloved, salam to our teacher. Allahumma Allah, Sayyidina Salam. Salam to our beloved, and salam to our teacher. Salam to his mother, salam to his father. Salam to his beloved, and salam to his daughter. O Lord of the mountain, O Lord of my heart, O Lord of everything from sea to sea apart, O Lord of reunions, Lord of love and peace, will you have us all meet again in one piece, one heart, ummah, one love, one together. Will you have us all meet again in the land? Allahumma Allah, Sayyidina Salam. Salam to our beloved, salam to our teacher. Allahumma Allah, Sayyidina Salam. Salam to our beloved, salam to our teacher.
We are the staff chaplains in the Office of Religious Life. A few years ago, Teresa dubbed us the Fab Five, and we are standing here for moral support with one another while we remember our beloved fifth. We do many things alone. We have big portfolios that we are each working on, but we also do a tremendous amount of things very closely together. In the fall of 2007, I began conversations with the then Vice President for Campus Life, Janet Dickerson, talking about creating full-time, permanent, institutionally supported positions of Hindu chaplain and Muslim chaplain. And a national search was commenced for each of those, and Vineet came to be our Hindu chaplain at the end of that year. More than 100 really talented people applied to be our Muslim chaplain, and there was a real standout, and I offered him the job, only to find out that he was also being courted by another school, and it took him a while to do the discernment to think about whether he wanted to come to Princeton or to go to that school. And he kindly came to my office to tell me in person that he was going to take the other job offer, in large part because of family considerations, and I was despondent. And as he left my office, he just turned around and off the cuff said, "Well, you know, the best person in this work in the United States is Sohaib Sultan." Sohaib had not applied. And I said to the fellow, "Well, spell his name for me and give me his cell phone number." And the next day, I was on the phone with a really lovely sounding young man who was up in Connecticut, serving part-time at 2 different really fine schools up there, and I was able to succeed in convincing him to come down and meet with us, speak with us, and interview and see who we were and what we were hoping for Muslim life at Princeton. Sohaib came to us as the school year of 2008 was starting. He was just turning 28 years old himself. And those of you who are students may think that's ancient, but it's not. He was a very young man. Yo, 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 we began to hear through the halls of Murray Dodge, and he would sweep into rooms with a huge smile on his face, frequently late, and we loved him from the moment we first got to know him. He really built a community here, as we've heard, from scratch. There was no template to follow, there was no model. He did it. He made it up. He made up a model of Muslim chaplaincy for this country, and I would also say for the world, with what passion and so much imagination, and at the heart of all of it is endless love. He said at one point a few years ago that his favorite thing about his work here was building a community. He didn't say building community, which he certainly was doing. It was building a community. A single space, capacious enough, loving and broad enough to hold all the people who wanted to be in it. And we're hearing today just so many testimonies about how beautifully he issued that invitation and that welcome. And so I leave with you that building this community was his great, great joy. He taught me many things. He taught all of us so much. And a few weeks before he died, I stopped by the house, I brought some food, and I left a card for him. And it says what I want you to know about how much he taught me. I hope I can make it through it. Dear Sohaib, I find that I don't have the words, my friend, to express adequately my appreciation, admiration, affection, and gratitude for you. You have been such a God-given gift to everyone who knows you, and a radiant bearer of God's love to all in the ORL and at Princeton. We are all better human beings and truer servants of God for having known you. You taught us all so much in your first 12 years among us, but in this last year you have somehow found infinitely more to teach us about the sacredness of every minute of life. None of us will ever be the same, Sohaib. We will have you in our hearts always. Great love, Allison. Thanks.
In remembering Sohaib, I'm reminded in this moment of three qualities that in my own Hindu tradition are often considered the hallmarks of one who is truly God-conscious. The first that comes to mind is called Maitra Karuna, and it means a deep friendship that's rooted in kindness and compassion. As Allison shared, Sohaib and I, somehow or other by divine plan or providence, were able to come onto this campus together. And almost immediately we became kindred spirits. I don't remember exactly when this was, but at a certain point, Sohaib started referring to me as Vinit Bhai. Sometimes he would do it publicly, but the times that I really loved, the times that were really thrilling, were the private ones, when he would just call me Vinit Bhai, and it was almost like a secret handshake between the two Desi boys in the office. It was just something that intimately bound us to each other, and something that was incredibly humbling to me because I knew he meant it. He accepted me as his brother. And that was what Sohaib was all about, was seeing everyone in terms of this wonderful, expansive, and expanding family. That deep sense of friendship and kindness. The second quality is called vinitam, and it means humility or egolessness. And Sohaib was genuine and authentic. He was honest and self-aware. He was particularly averse to self-promotion. We talked about this. And he just wasn't he was doing amazing work, as you all know, but he was just not into kind of making that the focus. And instead, he took every opportunity to be self-effacing. He recognized his own shortcomings, and he had shortcomings. He could be very scatterbrained. Organization wasn't necessarily one of his major strengths, and he recognized it. He was not a morning person. He and I think I can confess now, had a largely unspoken running competition as to who could be most late and most often late to our 9 a.m. staff meetings. I think we'll just call it a tie for now. It became a familiar sight for those who were in on it, that every year at opening exercises, as the chaplains would be part of the procession in, we'd all start looking at our watches, and still no sign of Sohaib. And at some point between Nassau Hall and the chapel, he would join the processional. I remember one year in particular, Archie, you and I were talking about this morning, where Sohaib was returning from facilitating a Muslim life retreat. And suddenly, just as we were approaching the chapel steps, we turn and we see Sohaib running from the parking lot and changing out of his t-shirt and like muddied sneakers into a kurta and formal shoes, throwing his clothes behind him. I don't think he ever got those clothes back. But through it all, he was the first to laugh at himself and to own and embrace his own shortcomings, what it means to be a faulted human being trying one's best. He had that humility. The third and final quality that I'm reminded of especially blossomed in his final days, and in my tradition we call that Bhagavad Ashraya, or taking full refuge in God and trusting in His will. We would speak often in his last year about theology. And he was convinced, deeply, not theoretically, deeply convinced that this was God's will, and it was his role to embrace that will and to be content in it. But it was there earlier too. In the years before Radia came into their lives, Sohaib and I would talk about being a parent. And Sohaib told me that he and Arshi were trying to discern whether it was God's will for them to be parents in this life, and how they were learning to be content with whatever God's will was for them. Maybe, he said one day, it is Allah's will for the students at the university to be our kids. And I want to be okay with that. And then, of course, years later, in our very last meeting in person, only a few weeks before his passing from this world, he told me, and he had a smile on his lips, he told me that he was convinced that it was Allah who had cared for Radia in her first days on earth, and that it was Allah who would continue to care for her after Sohaib himself would depart, and that it was Allah who allowed him the gift of being Radia's custodian for some time. I love and miss you, Sohaib. I'm so blessed that you accepted me as a brother in this life, and I've enshrined you as a friend, as a brother, and as one of my gurus, my teachers, in my heart of hearts.
Every pastor needs a pastor, and every pastor needs a friend, and every friend needs a friend, and Sohaib was my pastor and my friend. I could tell story after story about work, but I'll just say Sohaib was my friend. In unlikely ways, Sohaib was my friend, that he cared about women. He cared so much about the voice of women and the equality of women. He cared about race. It mattered to him that there were Black Muslims that came to prayer services. It mattered to him that there was a commemoration of Malcolm X. It mattered to him that I was in the Office of Religious Life as his colleague and sister and friend. And there are times through this journey that every pastor needs a pastor, so I would go to Juma prayer on Fridays and I would cover my head and cry because I needed a pastor. And during those services of prayer, I'm praying with my body, with the Muslim community, that Sohaib was my pastor. And in my own life, as I struggled with heartbreak and grief, Sohaib would sit in my office and we would talk about our families and faith in the middle of infertility and love in the middle of so much hate in the world. For those of you who know me, you know that I wake up super early in the mornings, at 4:30 in the morning actually. When Sohaib was sick, he couldn't sleep at night. And I have on my phone all of these text messages that we would send in the middle of the night and early in the morning, where we would text prayers to one another. Prayers for his wife and his family, prayers for this community, prayers around issues of injustices. The last thing I'll share is when I was getting married last summer. The only person that we could think of to marry us was Sohaib. And without a blink of an eye, without any questions, standing in Marquand Garden, Sohaib married me and my husband. And his prayer and his blessing for us was, may your love be a garden, that when it rains, that you know that God's watering your garden, and when the sun comes, lavish in that sunshine, because there will be days of rain, and know that, most importantly, that this garden isn't for you, but it's for those around you. I miss him so much. And I'm so thankful that God saw fit to have us here at the exact same time. Iron sharpens iron, and Sohaib made me better.
I had the honor and the conundrum of being Sohaib's so-called supervisor. And I was the wrong person to be his supervisor, as many of you might know. But when I first came, I had previously been doing interfaith organizing in New York City. And so I knew like 100 Muslim leaders in New York City. And I knew what was going on with that world to some degree. And it took me some time, but at some point I realized there is nobody who could be doing this job other than the particular person who by some kind of magic or God's will is here. This brother has something going on that allows him to pull this world together in this kind of place and to hold the place up and the people up together. We finally found another person who could do that, but just the kind of awe that I personally have with that. And then once a year, Sohaib and I would reflect on his year. That was like an official thing we would do. And he would rattle off this kind of astounding number of programs that he had done, like astounding, kind of crazy number of things that he and Archie and the community had pulled off together. And the routine was he would list all these off. I would feel kind of embarrassed at the number that I had done by comparison. And then he would say, and we would say together, that undoubtedly the more important thing was developing Muslim Princetonians, Muslim Americans, to be genuinely a Princetonian and an American and a Muslim, that was his, looking back, that's what his kind of purpose was. To me, that's how he would describe it to me. And then Sohaib also, to me, always felt poised, but the moments in our office when he had just learned that Radia was about to be in their world, his world with, he was always poised and always happy, and there was something more free and more beautiful and more, it was just this thing that we all shared together, and whoever else happened to be there in the moment. And I remember it must have been Ramadan, the first Ramadan that Radia was back here. Sohaib was sitting in his office with Radia sleeping in his arms, and he fell asleep. And they just sat there sleeping together for 20 minutes or something. We started doing Sufi meditation once a week, Sohaib and I, and as he got more sick, you could hear it in his voice that he was physically ill. His breath was tighter. And yet, each time, his singing was more beautiful. Strange how that can happen, how you can be more and more and more sick and be more and more free also. I don't know what else to say about it. Then also, besides being his supervisor, I happened to be in the office next to him. And so, as a lot of people here probably know, this was this clubhouse next to my office. And just the incredible number of students that would hang out in there and come in for counsel, and the amount of laughter and work, the mixture of laughter and work going on in there all the time. And then when it was quiet, it was because Sohaib was
with one student, just talking with one student. And then just the last thing I'll share is sometimes when there weren't students there and it was just Arshi and Sohaib, there'd be this laughter between the two of them. And it was this laughter that, it was like their shared laughter, you know. And I feel like when I walk by, when I'm in that office, that laughter is, is holding us up.
Assalamualaikum, everybody. Peace and blessing upon you all. I met Sohaib in the spring of 2004, and we were married in 2005, and so I was trying to do the math, and in the 16 years that I've known him, I just wanted to share with you all the things that he loved. I was looking at some of the pictures over the course of our years, and I loved taking pictures, and he would be my muse a lot of times, and I'd yell at him a lot of times for not taking my pictures, so full disclosure. But as I looked through all the pictures and memories, I started writing down the things that he loved, and I wanted to share that with you. So Sohaib loved the Quran, dhikr, remembering God, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, salawat, blessings on the Prophet Muhammad. Sohaib loved people. He loved smiling, laughing, listening. He loved laughing before telling a joke. Sohaib loved Curious George and shared that love with Radia. Sohaib loved soccer. He loved watching and checking scores for the Juventus games and the Manchester games and so many other games. He loved sleeping in the hammock in our backyard. Sohaib loved gazing at water, whether it was a small lake or a vast ocean. He loved going to the beach to gaze at that water, to put his feet in the water. He loved to go sailing and boating. Sohaib wasn't fond of four-legged animals, but he loved the zoo, and he loved turtles. He loved traveling and exploring new places, especially in America. He loved nature. He loved hiking and easy strolling. He loved Longwood Gardens in Pennsylvania. He loved Sayin Gardens in Hamilton. He just loved sitting in the bench in our front yard under the cherry blossom tree that in the last 2 months actually died, and I think that it was with him because trees have feelings too. Sohaib loved making up sweet, silly nicknames. He loved ironing his clothes. He loved a good morning shower. He loved to go out to get ice cream, a good movie, a good cafe, a good cup of coffee. He loved popcorn. He loved pomegranates. He loved honeycombs. He loved cheeseburgers. He loved peanuts, all nuts in general, and cherry Coke, which we stopped having for most of our later part of our marriage. Sohaib loved a good translation of the verses in the Quran. He loved meeting people where they were in their understanding of Islam. He loved being a bridge of understanding between faith communities. Sohaib loved to write, to think, to teach, to impart nuggets of wisdom. Sohaib loved his shawl. He loved dressing with his unique style. I helped with that too. And he loved his earmuffs. Sohaib loved to officiate weddings. He's really good at it. Sohaib loved his family, his parents, his niece and nephew. He loved Radia. He loved me. He loved his students, and he loved his job as being a Muslim chaplain. He loved it so, so much. Thank you.
Peace be upon you. We want to, in this sacred moment, share a prayerful reflection. I don't think that there's anything that I might in this moment say that will touch our hearts any more than what we've heard and experienced. But I feel obligated to share what's on my heart in this moment about my dear friend and beloved Imam Sohaib Sultan. I have the distinct honor of being the Assistant Dean for Muslim Life, or more affectionately called by students our Muslim Chaplain. And I'm deeply aware of Imam Sohaib's legacy and all of the ways in which he touched all of our lives. If you would allow me to just share for a moment some brief thoughts and reflections, and we'll close with a prayer. What we heard recited when we first gathered was from a chapter, Al-Ala, which means the Most High, one that is elevated, one that is raised up. And in that chapter, we hear both to celebrate the name of God, the Most High, and to also remember. So if you read this chapter, you'll see we're encouraged to glorify, to celebrate, and to remember. Sohaib and I first encountered each other not in person, but many years before I would actually meet him in person. In an aisle at a bookstore where I was trying to find good books on Islam and ran across a book called Quran for Dummies. And at that time, there were a lot of books. This for dummies, that for dummies, everything was for dummies. And there were all these books. And there was this book written by Sohaib Sultan. And so I read it. I wanted to see what was this and learned a tremendous amount. Though I think Sohaib would say that wasn't his finest work, you know. But like so many, that was our first introduction to Sohaib. And just like we're to reflect on this name Allah in Quran, I want us to reflect a little bit on the last name Sultan, which means power, authority, strength. And certainly, years ago, he was already asserting his gentle authority. As a writer, one of his loves. Then as a student, myself in seminary, where he was attending before. Like so many today, we talk about his reputation, who he was, Sohaib Sultan. I had heard about him even before I met him. And from the time that he would visit us at the seminary to share his experiences and to share his wisdom and to share his insights about chaplaincy, I grew close to Sohaib. There was something about that brother. There was something about that brother. So over some years, we developed a friendship. He became my colleague. He became my mentor. He was even the reference for my first chaplaincy job. And then a few months into that job, my father passed away after a long battle with cancer. And then Sohaib became my chaplain. After that, we shared many spaces, many cups of tea and coffee. We shared our stories, we shared ourselves. We shared our mutual appreciation for Sufi poetry. It's where I learned in those conversations of Sohaib's love of Juventus Soccer Club, turtles, cheeseburgers, and cherry Coke, and issues of social justice and what it means to really live like a human being. An unlikely companion. A Midwest boy, Muslim of South Asian descent, and a biracial kid from the Deep South who converted to Islam. Upon his passing, the reflections and gatherings in his honor that I saw and I witnessed, like so many of you, the social media posts and the deep sorrow that was felt in this space and in this community, across the country, and perhaps across the world. One thing stayed with me. So many people said it was his presence. It wasn't even all the wise things that he shared, Oftentimes it was just him being there. And so presence, as he taught me and shared with me when I lost my father, can be with us even when we're not physically together. We can feel each other's presence. When I first arrived on campus, Sohaib's picture was still prominently displayed on the steps of this chapel. And when I walked into Murray Dodge for the first day, I looked over and I saw him. And he was present. I felt his presence. We're advertising for today. And I reached out to Archie. I took a picture because I know she likes pictures, and Instagram and Facebook. And I said, look, Sohaib's greeting students all over campus with that beautiful smile. He's not here physically, but he's present. And then when I walk into my office, I haven't gotten up the courage to erase his handwriting on the board because he left me some advice, some words of wisdom, a very short verse or part of a verse in our holy book. Surely God is with those who are patient. So Sohaib has taught us, even without him being with us physically, that you can have presence and you can make a difference long after you're in this world. And the power of an individual to positively impact and affect the lives of so many beyond himself. So Sultan means power and strength and authority and moral courage. He showed us the power of presence. He taught us the power of presence, the power of kindness, the power of walking gently on the earth. He taught us the power of being vulnerable with each other, that in those moments of our weakness comes tremendous strength. And he taught us purpose, what's possible when we're determined to be the best version of ourselves. He taught us the importance of being welcoming, diverse, and service-oriented, and to live spiritually centered and balanced lives. He also, as Archie said he loved so much, taught us the power of remembrance, of remembering, to remember who we are and from whence we came. He taught us to remember how far we've come and how far we must keep going. So our memories, what we carry, our experiences that we remember of the past, shapes our lives in the present. So let us go out from the chapel today remembering the powerful lessons of our dear Imam Sohaib Sultan. And so we're remembering and we're celebrating. And why celebrate? Why be joyous? Because we can. And because we should. And because we need to. So at this time, we ask our Lord, we ask God, we ask the Most High to be present in our lives and to allow us to be present with the ones that we love. And we ask for peace and love, and kindness, to be who we are as a reflection of Sohaib. We thank you for remembering and celebrating together the life of Imam Sohaib Sultan. And at this time, we invite you outside for food, cheeseburgers and cherry Coke, and fellowship. Peace be upon you. Please give the peace and the greetings as we go outside to those that you know and those that you don't know. Thank you so much. Peace.